party people? This week we got DB Andry on to talk about End After End, out from Vault Comics. Issues 1 through 5 are out already. Issue number 6 drops on April 12th, so go pick it up. You will not be sorry. After reading that first issue, I was hooked, and I'm excited to go back to the world. Check out the interview. Hey guys, welcome to the show, David Andry. David, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's not going too bad. I hope you're having a good morning. I know it's a little early today on the West Coast.
This is my normal get up, and I'm a morning writer, so I like to get up and write early as like my brain's still kind of free of any of the stresses of the day and get stuff done.
That's really awesome. I that was going to be one of my questions. Like, so as soon as you wake up, coffee, and then
Yep.
every day writing.
Well, I would love to say I do it every day, but it's pretty much just Saturdays and Sundays right now.
Okay.
And I'm pretty good at, I don't really mess around a lot when I write. I'm like in, and I'm kind of a bit of a machine when it comes to that. And so my output is actually fairly good. Uh, if I worked every single day, I'd probably be less focused.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure if my output would get like more. But like Monday through Friday, I'm usually running through story in my head of exactly what I'm going to get done this weekend. And so in the mornings in the shower, working stuff out. And then by the time Saturday and Sunday rolls around, I have enough stuff that I've kind of worked out in my head that I can just bang it out on the keyboard pretty quickly. And if it's something, what my process is now is me and Tim Daniel are co-writers. And so I'll do a really quick pass, send that to him, just of a like, we call it a vomit draft. It's just everything that happens. And I really love dialogue. So I do the dialogue with that pass. And it's kind of, a little writer's tip. Do the fun stuff first, get that stuff flowing. And, if you like doing dialogue, do the dialogue. And so I do all the dialogue or most of it, and then send that to Tim, and he'll take a pass at that rough draft and give it back to me. And then I'll turn that into a script. And for me, since I've already seen this material twice now, the scripting part goes pretty fast too. So, yeah, I kind of bust stuff out fairly quickly with 2 days, actually 2 mornings of work a week.
That's pretty fantastic. It's almost like a garden hose mentality where you're holding the hose for the rest of the week, and then Saturday, Sunday morning, you let it rip.
It just blurts out all over the page as fast as possible. Yes.
And your full-time gig, I'm assuming, is you're a PT, right?
Yeah, I'm a physical therapist. Yeah. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. And it's not a physically hard job, but it's pretty, mentally and emotionally draining. You're working with a lot of people that are in pain all day long, and that and they need a lot from you sometimes. And so some days I get home and I'm just emotionally exhausted. And Tim and I try to put so much like thought and emotion into our work that if you don't have a pretty full gas tank, it's hard to get yourself up for that writing where that part of the story may be the part that's making you cry. And so I'm crying as I'm typing, and you're trying to get all that emotion on the page, and you got to have at least some in the tank to put out there.
Yeah. My wife's a PT, so, believe
awesome.
me, I'm on the, I know what that's like, and she comes home after those lines. She works with developmentally challenged children, so it's very taxing on her, and comes home after like that 8-hour day, and it's like,
right.
And
I need a little like decompression time. I need a little bit of like, hey, don't talk to me. Hey, don't like bring me any problems that I need to try to solve. I just need to I need to chill for a second and like kind of leave work behind.
Yeah. Little side question. Have you ever used Luna? The Luna app?
Luna? No. Is that for like is that the like a meditation or sleep app?
So if you want to pick up, I don't know what your PT schedule is, but if you, and I don't know if it's on the West Coast, but my wife uses it on occasion. It's basically like this app that like puts you in touch with folks who need physical therapy.
Oh,
And
nice.
I think it pays like 75 an hour, and you
Oh, really?
basically you do an
Just freelancing.
evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do an evaluation. If you get picked, you get picked. Insurance takes care of it. And then you'll schedule this person like twice a week for an hour each or whatever.
Oh, nice.
And, when she was during summer last year, like she picked up like 4 clients and was just like after work, Monday, Tuesday,
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, and, made like a good extra chunk of change. I don't know if you're into something like that or if it's, you're just
Yeah.
like,
I
you're
like
done, like
money.
8 hour shift and you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually 8 hour shift I'm done, but sometimes you got a little juice afterwards. Yeah. Sometimes not so bad. You have pretty low emotional intensity days that you can kind of have a little bit of extra afterwards.
Yeah. So back to comics, the
Yeah.
good stuff. Did you grow up a comic fan?
Yeah. From about sixth grade on, when I was in
Mm-hmm.
sixth grade, a kid that I went to a very small Catholic grade school, so there's only like 28 to 30 kids in my class,
Mm-hmm.
and a kid transferred they moved from San Jose, and he started in our school, and so it was like, oh, there's a new kid, and he pulled out of his backpack like the first day he was there, like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic. So
Oh wow.
I'll give you a little insight into my age. It was 1986,
Okay.
and I was like, what? From somewhat aware of comics, but
Mm-hmm.
like because they're at the time they're in grocery stores and they're on spinner racks in like
Mm-hmm.
7-Eleven and stuff. But I had no idea stuff like that existed. I'm like, wait, there's turtles that are ninjas that have swords. This is amazing. And so from that moment on, we had a really great
Mm-hmm.
comic book shop in Manteca where I grew up, and just absolutely lived there. I mean, was there every weekend, all summer long, pretty much every day. Like the owner was very sweet and did not kick us little kids out that didn't have any money
Yeah,
to
yeah,
just
yeah.
hang out all day. Yeah. And so, yeah, from then through like college was an avid, all through the 90s, the image
Mm-hmm.
explosion, all that stuff. Right around 96, I was in college and very, very poor and ran out of money. So I stopped
Mm-hmm.
collecting for about 10 years and then got back in like 2000 and probably 2006, 2007, sometime around there.
What brought you back in?
Um, I, I had, even when I was not collecting comics, I still had a bunch of comic book friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would still go to like Comic Con in San Diego. And
Yeah.
this was when it wasn't, my best friend Sean Kirkham, he at the time was working for like Sony and he did an internship at Marvel. And
Mm-hmm.
so he always had an in for tickets. I've never had to purchase a Comic Con ticket on my own ever.
Fantastic.
And so, yeah, we always, you get grandfathered in, your pro pass works for how
Mm-hmm.
many years or whatever. And so we would just go and I would just go for the spectacle and comic art and like just, we could walk into panels and stuff like that at the time. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
the insanity that Comic Con turned into. So, I we went for a bunch of years in a row, and around that time, 2000, whenever Skybound was formed, whenever the Walking Dead TV show started,
Yeah.
um, my Sean's friend Cena Grace, who worked at a comic shop in LA where he lived, but also was Robert Kirkman's editor on
Mm-hmm.
Walking Dead and Invincible. He was looking for people to come help run the Skybound booth because Skybound was just created. The
Right.
show was going to be launched, and it was like that was the first time people were seeing the Walking Dead TV show was going to be at that convention. And so they're like, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have our own booth. You can come work. We'll pay for your meals, pay for your hotel, pay for your travel. Everything will be taken care of. And we're like, oh, of course. We're not going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
pass that up. Yeah, and that kind of rolled into me volunteering for Skybound for about 11 years, and Sean working for Skybound and becoming like the director of business development for years and years and years and years and years there. And so, yeah, that kind of reignited my interest in comics because I
Mm-hmm.
had to sell the Walking Dead comic and Invincible comic. And I wasn't going to be someone who didn't know the comic trying to sell it. I wanted to have
Right,
like
right.
an honest read of the comic. So I went to actually bookstores. I went to like Borders and
Mm-hmm.
bought all the omnibuses and trades and whatever I could get my hands on. So I got up to date on Walking Dead and Invincible before that show, and then been going on for like 7 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I got up to date on everything before that show started. I'm like, man, comics are awesome. And
Yeah.
so yeah, and just I mean, if you're gonna get rehooked on something, I mean, talk about like the best couple of comics to get rehooked on.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and what happened for a while is actually I got all the Image comics for free in the mail
Very
for
cool.
being a volunteer. Yeah, I got kind of up on their mailing list, and like I'm just everything, east of west, and this was when all these great titles were
Oh yeah.
were
Yeah.
launching, and yeah, I mean it was like almost another kind of golden era in comics, and yeah, that hooked me back in pretty hard.
That was, you said that was 2006, right?
Somewhere around there. I mean, I'm
Mm.
literally terrible at dates and remembering things. So if
Mm.
people look up when the Walking Dead TV show started, it was the July before that because it launched in October of that
Yeah.
year.
I
Yeah.
think I think that may have been the only time I went to San Diego. I want to
Oh
say it
yeah.
was this. I want to say it was the same exact year that you were there.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because the only thing I could that sticks out in my memory, besides like all the fun that we had, was on the convention floor. And this might key you in if we were at the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
They had a giant snakes on a plane booth.
Yes.
If you were there, then I was there at the
Yes.
same year.
That was the same year, I think, because
Yeah.
Snakes in a Plane was supposed to be this big thing, and everyone thought it was ridiculous. And the Walking Dead TV show and the Walking Dead trailer
Mm.
actually was the buzz of the show.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
everybody was talking about it. Like we were not prepared for the fan response at that booth
I can
because it
imagine.
was absolutely nuts. Yeah, and we had the entire cast came through
Mm.
and did a signing like limited to 100 people, and all the volunteers are acting like human shields trying to like keep the fans back. It was wild. It was great, man. It was
Yeah.
such a cool experience.
That's awesome. It's always weird when that stuff happens at conventions. Like I'll like a little similar story. I would work the Dark Horse booth at New York Comic Con, and I've done it for the past God knows how many years as their photographer, right? So I'm kind of glued to the booth all day.
Yeah.
And one year, God rest his soul, like Anthony Bourdain was signing a comic.
I remember that.
And
I
and
remember that.
yeah, and I've never seen so many like it was basically all the dads and all the
Yeah.
people who were there not for Comic-Con, just like floating around with their families, go ballistic for this guy. And it
Yeah.
became that situation of like, whoa, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm helping
Yeah.
security out. Just
Right.
like becoming like a human barricade to like
Yes.
this like people are just yelling at this dude. You know what I mean? It was just like a
Yeah.
mob of like that you when you see like when you go to a concert and you see like just like that wave of like a mosh
Yeah.
pit happening,
Yes. Yeah, because as soon
Mm.
as a small crowd gathers, then you
Mm.
get like 75% more people just to see what the crowd is there for at Comic Con.
Right.
They don't
Yeah.
know what they're coming to look at. They're like, "Who is
Mm.
this? What's going on?" And we're like, "Why are you here if you don't know?" That just people just want to see what the cool thing is. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was quite an experience. And I got to meet like because the Sky Mountain image booths were created, were connected because
Mm.
it's basically the same company. It's Robert's imprint um, within Image. I got to meet like tons of image creators
Mm.
and get to know them a little bit and talk to them about creative process and all this and
Yeah.
how to get into comics because I back in the 90s was always trying to like this was the time when people could do talent searches and get a
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there was like Wildstorm talent searches, and I would write a script and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and send it in and get I still have them all my rejection letters and like feedback. Sometimes they would be really nice and give you feedback and stuff. And so it was
Mm.
like he didn't like with one of the letters, it didn't say this was terrible. So I'm like, oh, it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't right for them. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
when reality and bills and stuff start to settle in, you're like, well, I guess I can't. I guess I got to get a real job.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and then the comic thing takes a back seat. But man, it really reignited my
Mhm.
fire to get back into conventions and like just see the fans and see the creators and stuff.
So that was that was your way into the comic industry. Like that was like your initial kind of like
Yeah,
first
I mean
step, right?
that's how I met Tim Daniel. That's how I met
Mm,
basically everybody that I know. I used to know everybody that worked at Image, everybody
mm,
that worked at Skybound, and yeah, I met people who were trying to do. Tim was the graphic designer and
mm,
designed all like the T-shirts and logos for Skybound stuff, for a bunch of Image stuff, and he was also a writer and was doing kind of the same thing that I was doing. He was
mm,
way ahead of me. He'd already had stuff like published, um, and so but he was really receptive to giving me feedback and talking to me about like my scripts and stuff. So I
mm,
would send him stuff. He would read it and give me feedback and really just a lot of encouragement because you're
mm.
like you don't know if something's good until someone else tells you it's good, right?
Right, right. Yeah,
I can't be
you could think your own stuff is amazing until
right,
somebody says like, it's all
right.
right.
It's a
Mm,
weird thing about being like doing something in a creative field is I don't get to
yeah.
decide if it's good or not, right?
Right, right, right.
Everybody else gets to decide. So it's weird. You need a little bit of that. You need a little bit of that feedback, at least
Mm,
at the beginning, to make sure you're not terrible at it, and it
yeah.
makes sense as a script, and then you turn it in. I self-published a bunch of stuff,
Mm,
4 different volumes of like a relationship drama, and when you start selling it or giving it away or having people read it on the Comixology,
yeah.
um, and you get some positive feedback, it's like, okay, that's that little bit of validation you need to get started. They always say like, don't read your reviews, but you gotta get some kind of like honest feedback from someone who's not emotionally attached to you
Yeah, yeah.
before you
Yeah.
can really decide if you're like, oh, this is for you.
Yeah, you could also, I think, like if you, without being too sensitive about it, you could also separate reviews that are bitter
Right.
and, and like actually constructive criticism,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I can see it's funny because you can see like I really appreciate when they said this was not a clear part of the story
Hmm.
or I didn't feel the emotional impact of this. That's great. I'll take that feedback all day long.
Hmm.
Other than, yeah, I didn't really like it. It was, I'm like, that
Right.
okay, fine. That's, if you're gonna write a review, write, give me some criticism and where it's a critical criticism, where it's something saying this is what's not good about this technique or what you were trying to achieve did not hit. Um, yeah. So those are reviews that are actually pretty helpful.
Yeah, those are better than, like I do another podcast called Mat Men, and it's, it's pro wrestling based. And it's knock on wood, it's gained a lot of popularity in the last few years. And then, like sometimes we'll look at the comments and it's either like, hey guys, great episode, you messed up on this, blah 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 blah. Cool, thank you very much. Send them a nice reply. Sometimes it's like, what a bunch of losers,
Yeah.
and you're kind of like, all right, man, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Why are you watching? Stop.
Like you took energy out of your
Yeah.
day to write that to me, like
Yes.
it's very bizarre sometimes, but yeah, like I agree with that. Like, you need that constructive criticism and also like that reinforcement to kind of push you a little bit, because like, talent wise, you're not gonna, I think, depending on the person, you're not gonna get worse,
Yeah.
like you'll get better or you'll plateau,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
And yeah. And I don't know. It takes a lot of kind of either self delusion or confidence to start throwing
Mhm.
stuff out into the world.
Yeah.
So I think you got to have a little bit of either one, either that like, yeah, I know I'm good, or oh God, I hope this is good. One of those two,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and hopefully you're open to like things making things better as much as possible.
Yeah. I think you need a thick skin also.
you do, and it's the weird thing. Writing is such a weird personal thing because you're
Hmm.
putting, like I said, we put tons of emotion on the page. So like we
Yeah.
rip stuff out of our own lives, like traumatic moments, and
Hmm.
like if we end after end, we were talking about a little bit that fourth issue, like all those flashbacks were stuff that either me or Tim probably lived through,
Hmm.
and so it's like you put yourself out there, so you have to be super vulnerable, and then you have
Hmm.
to accept editing and criticism to change that. But you also have to be so confident that after you put it out, bad stuff people say doesn't bother you. So it's a
Yeah.
strange balance of being very sensitive to what someone is saying, plus not caring at all what other people think, plus caring a whole bunch that people like what you wrote.
Right. And yeah, it's like it's a lot of stuff, and like also like I gotta sell some books, like
Right.
it
It's
has
also
to
got
be
to be
good.
popular and fun, and yeah, and you got to try to like hustle it as much as you can. There's so
Yeah.
much on comic book shelves right now. Marvel and
Yeah.
DC. And I collect Marvel and DC, but they try to bury indies with just the sheer volume of books that come out. Right? They're just trying to
Yeah.
give you 20 Spider-Man books, 15 Batman books, 12 different Superman books, so the your dollar doesn't spread out into the indie world.
Yeah.
Um, and so you whatever little peeping noise you can make, say, hey, look at me over here. There's also good stuff
Yeah.
happening in this world, and there's 300 titles that come out a month, and to have anyone say, wow, I really like this thing that you wrote. That's, to me, that's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing that you found it, amazing that you picked it up and purchased it, amazing that you took it home and read it,
Mhm.
and then amazing that you liked it. I mean, that's like a tiny miracle every time someone buys your comic.
Yeah, especially on like you said on that independent scale, like Marvel people always uh, to philosophize just a little bit, but like I've been a lifelong fan of comics. I'm a fan of the big two. I'm a huge fan of indie books. But
Yeah,
folks always say like, oh, like it's gonna collapse one day for Marvel and DC. Guess what? It's not.
it's not.
Like
Yeah,
they're gonna, like you said, they're gonna put out 15 Batman books a month or 15 Superman books a
right.
month and 20 Spider-Man books a month. But also the reality is like, listen, a lot of them ain't that great. Like
Yeah,
your core, a lot of your core titles are fantastic, and it gives you that love that you have as a
yeah,
comic fan where you're like, oh man, can't wait to read the new Amazing Spider-Man. But do I need to read like the X, Y, and Z? No, I don't.
right.
Um, and I think for me specifically, like I picked up end after end after on like a whim, and I was like, I loved the cover basically. Like
Yeah,
it was very much akin to like, going to the library when you're a kid and getting a fantasy novel and you see
yeah,
you have no idea what's inside, but you're like, that cover looks awesome. I got it right
yeah,
here, actually.
yeah.
Like that
And that,
first.
yeah, and that was Tim. Tim's like,
Mm,
Tim designed that cover, and Sunando like did
mm,
an amazing job on the art on that cover.
mm,
And Kurt Michael Russell, I think, he might have colored it. He's the internal colorist. I'm not sure if he colored that cover or not,
mm,
but man, I mean, Tim puts out a great look presentation. That's exactly
yeah,
what he wanted to look like. That old scroll work around the sides, looking like a fantasy novel. And it's like,
yeah.
yeah, whatever we can get to have someone like pick it up and take a couple of look at a couple of pages. I've always been pretty confident that the stuff that I write will connect with most people, and
Mm,
if I can just get them in the door, then I'm gonna grab them. The hard part is getting someone to do exactly what you did: walk
mm.
through, pick it up, start flipping through, and give it a little bit of attention.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit tough, like I can only speak for myself because like I'm for the most part like, and I'm an unbiased fan, and if it looks cool and the art's cool, I'll pick it up.
Yeah,
And plus I get like a pretty good discount at my comic store, so it's not gonna hurt me.
yeah,
But like let's talk about End After End a little bit. So like when I got that first issue, I was hooked immediately. Like I really enjoyed it, and issue 5 just came out, I want to say.
yes,
Like that was the last
right,
one, right?
yes,
And that's the
yeah.
end of volume 1.
End of volume one, yeah.
Okay.
And so
So
there'll be
what
a little break, and then 6 through 10 will come out fairly monthly. I think starting in April or March.
Okay.
I think April. I think April, and then the first volume comes out in May sometime.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so people can get caught up while 6 through 10 is still on the shelf if they want.
So walk me through it. Okay. First issue starts with William, the main character, right?
Dying
Dying,
immediately.
dying immediately. Now, okay. So this might be like this might be a dumb dumb question, but
Yeah,
like I read the first 5 issues like a couple of times, right?
yeah.
Suicide or accident?
Very good question because he's kind of distracted and backing up, but
Right.
Walt also is not really. Once you read 4, you understand that Walt wasn't really having the best life to him.
Walt, I apologize. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it mainly is going to read as an accident, but
Okay.
yeah, but if you want to see it as the other thing, you absolutely can.
Yeah.
He just didn't. Life never really worked out the way he thought it was going
Uh-huh.
to. And so that kind of leads us into maybe this is his second chance to get the life that he thinks he deserves, or that he wants, or that he needs. And
Mhm.
and some of it is like, I hope when people finish and look back, they're like, well, he a lot of it was it's a lot of it is perception, right? You can perceive things as being good or bad, and
Mhm.
while he didn't enjoy his life, he actually was doing stuff that he was good at and getting paid for it.
Mhm.
He was a somewhat, at least, successful paid artist to do. It was kind of almost based. He was originally like a graphic designer because I just based him on Tim,
Okay.
and then we kind of expanded him out. But he was an artist, a struggling artist, and so a lot of his struggles mirrors just the artistic person's struggles, and like
Mhm.
we were talking about, getting noticed and doing what you love and having people connect to your art and things like that.
So yeah, so on the first read through, and like I'm loving the story so far, and I kind of want to break it apart a little bit, or expand on a few things. So, and this is a spoiler alert, guys. If you're listening to this, we're gonna go into it just a little bit, and pick up the book too. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. You
So
can't spoil anything completely until issue 10. I mean,
okay,
yeah.
so it's still a mystery. So
Yeah,
on the first read through, I read I read the opening page with Walt passing away as a suicide, as
yeah,
him. You know what? This is my final act. I'm gonna take a picture of it was like a floating insect, let's say,
yeah,
like a flying
yeah,
insect, right?
yeah.
And that's it. I'm gonna jump in front of this train. On the second read through, after getting to know the character, you're kind of like, oh, he's kind of a little bit aloof
Yeah.
and not really, and very distracted and not really
Right,
grounded in
right.
his
No, yeah,
surroundings,
yes. Not really
and
connected to the world very well. Yeah.
right, because he's kind of like most of like a lot of us are kind of wrapped up in your own head.
Yep.
Is it the case of him, just being like most people, tied to their phones and just missing the point and really getting hit by the train?
Yes. That is
um
how we originally conceived it.
mhm,
Like, he's
yeah,
just like not paying attention, not connected to the world. He's like, oh, there's this, and he does have that artistic eye, so he appreciates something unique
yeah,
and beautiful, and he sees this unique and beautiful cicada,
yeah,
and which was a throwback to my other book, Resonant,
mhm.
and just falls in front of this BART train in San Francisco and just smash.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
he wakes up in this like I don't want to say like nether realm or limbo war world essentially, where he's
Yes.
immediately armored up and put into battle.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like if you jumped in a portal and fell into the middle of the D-Day invasion.
okay.
As all the boats are landing, and the machine guns are
Mhm.
going, and like someone just picks you up, hands you a weapon, and points you in the direction of the bad guys. That was the feel we wanted of that first issue. And a lot of people either, and this was a funny comment that we got a
Mm-hmm.
lot on issue one. We had people that said I was just as confused as the character, which is exactly what we were going for. We wanted
Mm-hmm.
the reader to like be in Walt's shoes as much as possible and go
Mm-hmm.
along this journey with him. I mean, people, man, I was who said the exact same thing. Like, I was just as confused as the first character as the main character, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I was just as confused as the main character, and I hated it. and, so,
Yeah.
and so it was either that. It was kind of this bifurcation of like
Mm-hmm.
the people who read it. It was like it was too confusing, or I was like, man, I loved how confusing it was.
Yeah, and you kind of, that's kind of like the end of that first issue is what hooked me on to the rest of the series, where I was like, you know what, I really want to see what goes on, and there's
Yeah,
like, you're a comic fan, like sometimes you'll pick up those number ones and you're like, I don't need to get number two,
yeah,
you know, but like I'm glad I stuck with it, and I would love people to read more of it, and you get like more, you get to know the world a little better, and
yeah,
for me, I think it's like it's seeing Walt having a perspective shift. Like you were saying,
right,
his flashbacks, and like, listen, a lot of those flashbacks kind of hit home for me, and I know for a lot of people. Just kind of like, looking at your work and looking at yourself and saying like, and he was an artist and saying like, yeah, I mean, I could crank out stuff for money, but
right,
it's not gonna make me happy.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah, and he never really finds that balance in the
Mm-hmm.
real world, right? It's either one or the other. Yeah, and again, we pulled a lot of stuff from our real lives, stuff that
Yeah.
we've gone through, to like try to make Walt as real as possible, um, and that was funny because that was a major change based on the editor.
Mm-hmm.
So Adrian Wassel from Vault, that fourth issue was originally almost like the day leading up to his death.
Okay.
So it was kind of a day in the life with a little bit of a time jump in there, but it was kind of like it.
Mm-hmm.
We had the same purpose of establishing who Walt was and why he was kind of the way he was. And I had I had a really great scene in there that I loved that killed me
Mm-hmm.
to cut, but I'll use it someplace else at some point. But but it works so much better to show, to catch you up all through his life. And that,
Mm-hmm.
was Adrian's like note is like, this kind of seems too standard, too
Okay.
easy. And and that's the tricky thing. Sometimes if it's too easy, you're not pushing yourself hard enough as a
Mm-hmm.
creative person. So that was a really excellent note from him.
Yeah.
And he didn't tell us really how to change it, but he's like, this is not getting what you think you're getting across. So we delved way deeper and came
Mm-hmm.
up with way more personal stuff and said, let's just put this all out there on the page, and it works way better. And Tsunade does a great job, and Kurt does a great job with the different art styles and the coloring
Yeah.
that take you through those flashbacks. It's kind of this, like, if you're watching it on TV, it would be kind of this
Mm-hmm.
like hazy, foggy, like soft filter lens that you're
Yeah.
seeing the past in, and then back to this harsh reality of where he's at right now.
It always pays to have a good editor. You
Yes.
need somebody to like kick you in the butt a
Yeah.
little bit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're,
Mhm.
trying to do multiple things and trying to get stuff out pretty fast. Like, it's easy to fall into some tropes and some standard stuff, and you always want to, your first idea is usually not your best idea. So you need someone to kind of push you to idea
Mhm.
3, 4, 5, 30, 37, somewhere around there is where the good unique stuff happens, because it's hard
Mhm.
to mine yourself emotionally all the time, to
Yeah.
really rip out, your heart and put it on a page over and over and over again. But that, I think, is what makes stuff memorable. I think even if people don't realize it, they connect more with something like that the person got extremely personal with.
Mhm. There's a lot of authenticity. I think authenticity always comes across like
Yeah,
wholeheartedly, especially when you're, like when you're reading comics too. Like you can tell.
yeah,
Because I feel like it's such a small. It's such a. It's comics are huge, but I feel like it's such a small business.
yeah, Oh,
if that
totally.
makes sense.
Yeah.
What were some of your inspirations for End After End? And also, I'm a big gamer, so I after reading the first 5 issues, this is a video game I would love to play.
If someone knows how to turn stuff into video games, absolutely. Contact Vault. We are willing to turn N after N into a video game, 100%. You know what was interesting was End After End was the first project that me and Tim worked together on. So we
Mhm,
had been friends for 10 years, but we never really worked on stuff other than like him reading my scripts, me reading him scripts and giving feedback or, trying to solve problems and stuff. But he just decided one day, he's like, hey, let's do something together. And I'm like, yeah, of course, let's do something together. And my only idea, and we both came with like a blank slate. Tim has about
mhm,
50 projects that he's worked up through, pitches that he's worked up. I have like 12 or 13 that I've worked up, but we want to
mhm,
do something just clean together. And so it kind of developed really organically into this artistic, kind of like this story of an artistic struggle.
mhm,
And the only thing I wanted was that first page, the main character dies immediately and ends
mhm.
up in this world where he doesn't know anything and has no skills, doesn't suddenly have a training montage and now is the best swordsman in all the land.
Mhm.
Tim hates fantasy. Fantasy is not his genre of choice. He's much more
Okay.
of a horror writer. And he's like, so like we're on the phone and literally he says to me, I'm like, what do you want to do? And he's like, anything but fantasy. I'm like, well, I have this fantasy idea.
Uh-huh.
and but we wanted to do a war story. So it's like
Cool.
overlaid on this fantasy is more, it's more like Saving Private Ryan. 19, I think it's 1917 was the name of that movie.
Mhm,
And kind of all these war stories that like I grew up loving, he grew up loving. Um, because it adds this layer of intensity on top of everything, and you kind of get to strip away humanity and see what's at the core, almost like the same as like a post-apocalyptic story. You get to strip away all the
mhm,
humanity and kind of see what people are at the hardest times in their life. What comes out. um, and so I knew I wanted this guy who knew nothing
mhm,
and was never going to really be this great hero, but how could he find heroic moments in this new world? And that's kind of like what we're doing with Walt is trying to like find his heroic moments and see, as a creator, you, I'm never going to be, Steven Spielberg or Brian K. Vaughan or, Robert Kirkman. That's probably not in the cards for me. And it's hard sometimes to realize that you're you may not reach that top of the mountain, but you can reach a place where you are known and respected and liked. And again, that's the funny thing about being a creative is you can think your work is as great as possible, but it's other people that decide how good you actually are.
mhm.
And so and that's kind of like, our struggle and Walt's struggle is, can we be happy with our place? And not that we shouldn't strive for more, but can you be happy with where you're at? Um, and so that's what you'll find a lot with kind of Walt going forward.
Like
Um,
that kind of like, do I need to have this hard conversation with myself at one point?
right. It's like he's always 2 seconds from giving up. In
Mhm.
the right in the end after end, it's so hard. His journey is so difficult. Again,
Yeah.
he's not trained for this. He's not ready for this. Just kind of like we're born into life, not like trained for it or ready for it. um, he's already tried one time to have a life and it didn't work out, and now he's got to try again. And so it's like, what are those things that keep you going, and why don't you
Mhm.
quit? And so, yeah, trying to get into a lot of that with End After End. So it was mainly those themes that started to come out with when me and Tim were discussing like Walt's journey, and
Hmm.
we started to see the parallels. And then we, once you start to see those parallels and themes that mean a lot to you, just lean into them,
Yeah.
and that's what the story becomes about.
That's all, that's refreshing to hear too, just like the realness of it. And I like it, the what you said about the war stories really comes across, I think, especially in issue 5,
Yeah.
which uh is one of my favorite issues so far, with Walt and the how did you have him scripted? Like, was it like the unknown swordsman, or just
The enemy. He was the enemy.
he was the enemy?
Yes.
And Walt saying like, holy shit, wait a minute, you're human. And he's
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what that means anymore. If I don't kill you, I'm gonna be eaten later.
Yeah.
And it's like you kind of see like the two sides of the fronts that they're on, and like
Right.
what you were saying, it reminded me of like, sometimes you hear those stories from like World War I or World War II, where it's like soldier versus soldier, and
Yeah.
they're just like, listen, man, like I don't want to kill you, but I have to. Like, this
Right.
is, in I'm the good guy and you're the bad guy, like on both ends of it.
Right. Yeah. And that issue came to me pretty early in the process. And we
Hmm.
also called it the Gorn issue because it's like Captain Kirk on the planet with the Gorn. And
Yeah.
it's this, the kind of the bottle episode where you just have those two, you've had this massive cast of characters, then you
Yep.
have this two. And it always kind of happens in war movies too. And I think, directors and writers of war movies bring that in to remind the viewer that,
Hmm.
yeah, there's these huge explosions and planes crashing and ships blowing up, but there's people, there's like
Right.
each one of those is a person that had hopes and dreams and wanted to do all these things. And it was also Walt's time to realize that as bad as he thinks he has it, and he always is kind of that dour, oh,
Hmm.
poor is me, someone always has it worse,
Right.
and he showed up and he got a mentor, and he's with a group of humanoid type people, and this other
Hmm.
guy shows up and he's with the Reek, the bad guys,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, he like, your life was pretty hard compared to my afterlife. The
Yeah.
afterlife versus afterlife is not equal to. So yeah, that was my favorite issue. I like couldn't wait to start writing that one because that one had like solidified in my brain almost immediately. Like, we had come up with the beginning, we had come up with the ending within our first conversation, our first like 5.5 hour conversation. We had
Uh
plotted out like the beginning and end, and then I'm like, and I know I want this, and so almost the first day I knew I wanted this scene, this issue of this kind of mano one on one, really grounded and kind of almost a, a birthing scene where it's so brutal,
yeah.
that Walt kind of comes out of that, reborn in a slightly better or different attitude.
I love that one panel in there too, after he thrust the sword into the enemy, that he just kind of, it made it seem like he just hung on until night fell,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
like him
It
like
just,
pinned against the tree.
yeah, it's they're both either exhausted and hurt and just as worn out as physically possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to get that across, and Sonata did a great job with that whole issue.
How long do you guys foresee this going? Because I like one of the characters that I definitely want to know the origin of is the maniac, Stills, right?
Stills,
That's yeah.
who of course is my favorite. Once you start
Uh,
writing the crazy person, that yeah, they become your favorite. It's going to be 10 issues, so we got 5 more issues to go.
okay.
The Walt story, Still's story, all these character stories will mostly be wrapped up by then. It's going to have
Okay.
yeah, like I said, we found the ending pretty much the same time we found the beginning. And with current comics, you got to kind of plan on things going about 5 or 10 issues, and that's
Mm,
just every once in a while you get something that's killing the children or something that gets to run a little bit longer, but the
yeah.
majority of stuff you'll see out from indie publishers is 5 issues, 4 issues, you
Yeah.
know and it's just because you get attrition, and so you get a ton of people buying number ones, and then maybe 30% buy number twos, so it's, you start to lose you start to lose money, and it is still a business. So when we talk about, Marvel and DC trying to just push indies out of the, off the wall, that's what happens.
Mm,
And so if you're going to spend $4 or $5 on a comic, that Marvel comic, great. They don't really need your money. But
right. Yeah. Yeah.
if you want indie comics to, I'm not talking about my comics. I'm talking
Mm,
about indie. If you want indie comics and indie publishers to
yeah.
last, those dollars go a lot further.
Oh yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
it makes a huge difference if 10 more people buy my book.
Yeah, no, it's the irony of that kind of machine, where it's like
Yeah.
you said, Marvel and DC don't need your money to buy
No.
comics, like they do not, there's no, but they'll still crank out stuff that, I'll look at a lot of solicits and be like, well, this isn't for me, and that's fine, but why? Like, why are they putting this out? This is terrible,
Because someone's going to buy it, and it's going to push an indie comic a little bit further off
Yeah.
to the side. And comic owners are under, comic shop owners are under a tough business model as
Mm,
well. They got to buy stuff that's going to sell. You can't have
mm,
comics sitting on the shelf. You need to buy 75 to 90% of what they order. So you can stick a Spider-Man title out there and be guaranteed that you're going to sell all of them, or you can take a chance on some indie stuff. So any comic shop that takes a chance on indie stuff, was I'm really grateful for.
yeah.
And there's still shops where like companies like Vault and are not even on shelves. So it's awesome that we get so much support from fans that are kind of like, hey, pushing to the shop owners. If you guys pre-order books, that's the number one thing. And so
Right.
if you want to support indie comics, pre-order those books and put them on your pull list. And if shop owners see it on the pull list, they'll not only order one for you, they usually order more for the shelf if there's a
Mm,
big interest in those. So it's a weird freaking business that
yeah.
you have to commit yourself to a series before you can even read it. And
Yeah.
that's why Vault has made it a practice of letting you read number ones before they come out. All you got to do is follow like Adrian or Vault on Twitter,
Mm,
and they'll give you the number one. We'll let you read the number one before it even comes out. And I don't have a problem with that at all. Like
yeah.
everybody just read it, because again, you have to have that confidence that if you read it, you're going to like it enough to come back for number two. And so I fully support letting people read those number ones.
Vault has definitely, personally, I feel like Vault has definitely come a long way as a publisher in my eyes, where I'm like, you know what, like they've got a bit of that, like they got a bit of that image magic of, like, for the most part in the last, let's say, like 10 or 15 years, most number ones that Image has put out have been pretty great,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
Vault has that same trend where it's like most of the stuff you're getting is very high quality. There are a
yeah.
couple of, well, for me personally, again, there's a couple of misses in there, but for the most part, pretty fantastic books. Do you have more in the tank for end after end in case there's some kind of upswing or fans want more, kind of like Kieran Gillen's Once and Future, where that was supposed to be a limited series and
Yeah,
then he took it to issue 30.
yeah. And Dan Mora on that series is probably my favorite artist working right now. That guy's
Oh
a
yeah.
stud,
Yeah.
and he seems to be able to draw 23 comics a month, because he's.
Yeah. It's
I'm like,
wild.
how are you doing this,
Mm.
dude? But
Cranking it
yeah, and
out too.
yeah, yeah, you're never going to shut the door, on
Mm,
anything, and so while, like we said, the end after end exists as a
mm,
universe,
mm.
and you'll if you make it to issue 10, there's a little bit of hint out there that there maybe are other ends after ends,
Okay.
like Walt, just like there's different religions and different afterworlds and different religions, they may not all be like Walt's world that he fell
Okay.
into. So yeah, we're not going to close the door on it, of course. With like again with my first series, Resonant, it came to an end at 10,
Mm,
but I wrote 15 issues.
okay.
So as a creative, if you love, I mean, you love your stuff you wrote. I mean, I love
Mm,
everything that I wrote, right? Because I wouldn't spend my free time working on it if I didn't love it. I'm always ready to go back and play around in those sandboxes again.
And it's got to be cool to have something that you made in your hands, you know.
Dude, it's the most amazing thing. It's still unfathomable that you can buy my comic at your comic book shop.
Right, yeah, it's
Like
nuts
that
when you think
is
about it.
weird, man. I'm going from where I hand sold all my self-published comics,
Yeah.
to people at conventions and like over the internet, or and going to where people can, people in England are reading it, or people in different countries on
Mhm.
Comixology are reading it. That's freaking bizarre, man. That is so. It's I haven't gotten over that release day excitement yet, where it's like, oh, I got a comic in comic shops, and people are walking by in it and looking at it, and I'm like, please pick it up and buy it.
It's awesome. Have you gone to shops like that are not local to you and seen your book there?
Oh yeah, I that's the first thing I look for at any shop. I'll be down in LA in a couple of weeks for WonderCon,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'm going to go to a couple of comic book shops. And if I see my book, I'm bringing it to the front and like making some space and making its own little display. Yeah, yeah. If you don't have my book in your shop, I'm very upset.
You got to do the move. You got to do that classic move of like, hey, listen, let me sign a bunch of these for you,
Yeah.
and
Oh
let me
yeah.
take a bunch of free stuff.
Right. I've done that. I'm done. Look, I wrote this. Can you mind if I sign a bunch? And they're like, oh, sure. And like, yeah, that's it's a weird. Anybody could probably do that for any book. Go ahead and say, hey, I wrote this. Can I sign?
You're probably right about that, but I
No
don't
one's
think
checked my ID. No one's ever checked my ID when I've done that.
so. You're going to WonderCon in Anaheim. Are you tabling there or are you attending?
I'm attending. I
Okay.
don't know. I just kind of decided this weekend that I'm going to go. So I don't know if Vault's going to have a booth. I don't know if anyone's going to have a booth.
Mhm.
I will absolutely try to do some signings if that is the case. Um, I will. I'm going to try to see if I can get on some panels and chat.
Awesome.
Uh, and I will always have like exclusives because I have my own exclusives when I've done Resident and End After End.
Mhm.
I've done my own kind of print run that I get all the comics, and so you can
Mhm.
only buy them through me. And so I'll always have my exclusive comics with me at shows, willing
Awesome.
to sell it out of my backpack or whatever I got.
Are you gonna do the East Coast and come to New York Comic Con?
uh, my free ride with Skybound has kind of ended because
Uh,
they don't booth like they used to.
yeah, yeah.
So that becomes like really expensive. So I would have to make a little more money or get like hosted like hey
Yeah.
we'll we'll pick up your hotel room or whatever. I love New York Comic Con. It was one of the most stressful cons to work the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And they've kind of smoothed things out quite a bit and turned it into a pretty cool con. um, so now I kind of enjoy going to it. I dreaded it for the
Mhm.
first couple of years, but now I kind of like, yeah, this is cool. So I would love to do the whole con circuit. I'm a big fan of cons.
Yeah, same here.
I love meeting like fans.
Mhm.
It's so weird for me to say that word, but how about people that like my books? I think it's really cool to find someone who liked my books
Yeah.
and like yeah, I love that aspect. Again, I'll hand sell to anybody, and you know that's kind of that's my jam. That's where I get my juice. Like people coming up and saying, "Man, I really liked your book." I'm like, that is freaking amazing.
I do think comic creators, publishers need to put them more face forward as far as
Yeah,
like, this is what this person looks like.
yeah,
Because I feel like, I've been to conventions where buddies of mine have been like, oh shit, that's like so and so. And
yeah.
I'm like, I have no idea what that dude looks like,
Right.
or like,
Yeah,
I don't know what
yeah.
that lady looks like at all, because it's like, listen, not for nothing. Everybody looks like us. There's like how old are you?
I'm 48.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
41. It's
yeah,
dudes in their 40s with
right.
beards and glasses.
There we
Everybody
go.
looks the fucking
Yeah,
same, you know?
right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
like it's perpetually like I remember one of the folks at the Dark Horse booth, the first one of the first years I was working, she was like, "Why are you here again?" I was like, "Oh, I'm doing the pictures for you guys." She's like, "Oh, I thought you were a creator. You all look exactly the same."
Yeah, yes,
It's like, all right,
100%.
you know.
Yeah, there's very
But
little differentiation.
yeah, but I do think like folks' pictures need to be put like on their work. So you know what, like, so the cool stuff like that could happen more. Like, you could
Yeah,
be walking around and somebody be like, "Oh shit, like David Andry, like, yeah, I
yeah.
really like this. I really like Resident. I like end after end. Like talk to me." Um, so I got one important question, and then I'm gonna wrap it up with you, David.
All right.
What is your favorite sandwich?
Oh, my favorite sandwich. That's funny. I've had that question before on podcasts. Um, I will answer in a couple of ways. One,
Uh-huh.
not a hot dog because a hot dog is not a sandwich.
Okay.
I will die on that hill.
Do you consider
Uh,
a hot dog more of a taco?
I don't. I consider it its own sausage delivery system.
Mhm.
um, there is a place in Sacramento, and it's a small. I think it's a chain on like West Coast and maybe even
Uh-huh.
out into Hawaii called Ike's Love and Sandwich, and they have a fried chicken sandwich that has this like golden ranch kind of spread on it with pickled jalapenos
Yeah.
and pickles, and it is the best. Like people went nuts over like the Popeye sandwich and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
this is like that times 1,000. It's the best thing I've ever eaten in my life,
That
and
sounds amazing.
it's amazing. And they they like they fry the chicken, but like it's not like, oh, these are some frozen ass chicken strips we're gonna throw on there.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
everything's fairly fresh as much as you can for like a fast food kind of sandwich Subway type thing, and it's an amazing sandwich. And they have some great stuff on their menu in general. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is, man, one of the best. There's a deli in Sacramento too that has a really great pastrami sandwich. That
Yeah.
you get a good pastrami sandwich, man. That's knocking it out of the park right there.
It's kind of heaven.
Yeah, it doesn't get
Uh,
much better. Yeah,
yeah. Especially if you're I it's not an everyday thing because I feel like, if
right.
if you're in the mood for something salty, pastrami sandwich,
Yeah.
it's funny that a chicken sandwich also wins. Like I have a similar chicken sandwich story, sort of. There's this thing in New York in Brooklyn called Smorgasburg, right? And it's a bunch of I think they're all over the place at this point, but it's a bunch of pop-up food stands from like different restaurants or like independent folks putting their food out. And I was just like, all right, what am I gonna eat? And I see a sign and it says best chicken sandwich you'll ever have. And it was called a Sando Calrissian.
Oh,
And
nice.
as a nerd, I'm like, I think I found what
Yeah.
my lunch is. I'm going
Right.
by name alone.
Name
It was
alone.
name alone. It was the greatest chicken sandwich I ever had. And I was talking to the guys, and they were like, yeah, we don't have a storefront. Like it's pop ups, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we exchanged information. My full time gig is a photographer. And I was like, when you have a storefront,
Yeah.
keep in touch with me. I will shoot all your food. Just give me food to take home. And 2 years later, it happened, and
Nice.
they were like, we can't believe we stayed in touch for like 2 years. And I was like, just give me that sandwich, dude. Like, give me,
Yeah.
give me more,
Yeah.
unbeatable.
100% will work for food. Yeah, not
Mhm.
yeah. That's well, that was the best. That was the great thing about working, the booth for Skybound. Is they take
Yeah.
us out to dinners and stuff afterwards, and you get like really good food. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
forget it.
I sweated for 12 hours straight. I ate a hot dog out of my best friend's cargo short pocket for lunch, but this dinner is making it worthwhile.
Yeah, dude. Like we used to do when I was younger too, and we used to do the conventions. Like I would load up when you're young and you don't give a shit. Like I would
Yeah,
load up my backpack with like dollar Burger King or McDonald's burgers,
right.
and that was
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, you
That
don't
was
have
when I had an iron stomach. Now forget it. Like if
right.
I have a
Yeah, now I
McDonald's,
can't eat
like
any of
whew,
that. Now, yeah,
yeah,
now I eat nothing but salad. But in
yeah,
my dreams, I can still eat. I can still eat chicken sandwiches and
yeah.
hot dogs. But yeah, that would be literally like someone would go and get
Mhm.
20 hot dogs and put them in the back, and like when you had 5 seconds between customers, you'd eat a hot dog and get back to work slinging comics, man. But like we were talking about, the energy of
Mhm.
conventions is so awesome. Like you get a
Isn't it?
great convention, it just like pumps you up, and you
It
just
really does.
can't wait to like either like as a fan read more comics
Mhm.
or as a creator just produce. That's
Yeah.
like it really is like someone reading your books is really better than any drug that I could ever imagine. It's like there's nothing better than someone like little message on Twitter or Instagram. Hey man, loved your book.
Mhm.
I'm like, shit, that's awesome. I don't know you, random person, and you may be a serial killer bank robber, but dude, at this moment, I love you and thank you so much for like supporting my stuff.
Serial killer first, bank robber second.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have your priorities. You got to pay for what you love.
Dude, thank you so much, man. Where can everybody find you?
Mostly on Twitter. It's DB Andry. If you want to follow me on Instagram, feel free, but it's fairly boring there. It's just occasional book
Mm.
announcements and pictures of animals, chickens and dogs and cats and whatever else is roaming around our house here. But Twitter, yeah, I'm fairly active on that as long as that still exists. Um, I have a Hive account that I haven't really checked, but it's set up. But
Yeah.
everywhere it's DB Andry.
Awesome, man. Listen, I appreciate you coming on, dude. I hope you had a decent time.
Yeah, of course. It was awesome. Love chat.
Cool, dude. All right. Let me end the video. Thanks, man. I am looking forward to more. Rest assured, I will be at my local comic shop picking up issue number 6 this coming week. I have checked it off on my previews, and I will be purchasing it along with many other comics. My book of the week this week was Adventures of Superman John Kent number 2. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read the book just yet. It's a really cool way of working in the Injustice video game story into the Superman multiverse and having it be part of like multiversal canon. At least I think that's where they're going. Tom Taylor does a great job of combining the seriousness of what the book is dealing with. Ultraman is basically killing every Clark Kent in the multiverse, and it's up to John Kent to stop him. Now, if you're up to date with your DC books, you know that Ultraman kept John Kent in a volcano for many years away from his folks. That's why when John Kent came back, he was already a teenager. I believe that he lost 5 years in that time span. So this is kind of cool. Like I said, Tom Taylor does a great job of combining the serious stuff with the lighthearted stuff. You can go check him out on Nightwing also, which is another phenomenal book. Always makes it to the top of my stack. I've also been watching a lot of Lone Wolf and Cub. All the movies are on HBO Max, and I've just been eating them up like popcorn based on the manga from the 70s. Listen, if you like cool rock and roll and samurai slash martial arts flicks with tons of blood and violence, then do yourself a favor, check out that Lone Wolf and Cub series. I definitely want to hear what you guys think about it if you decide to pursue my recommendation. As for our guest for next week, listen, you never know who might show up, but that being said, let's grow the show together. I want to hear your thoughts, your comments. Subscribe to the channel. You can find me at BTC Rich on Twitter, BTC Rich X on Instagram. I want to hear what you guys think. I've been doing this for quite some time, slowly but surely trying to reach that 100 episode mark. Let me know what you want to cover. I'm going to be doing some more content, some toy stuff soon. I keep saying that every week, but it's going to happen. All right, guys. Later. Mwah.